Weaponizing discrimination, how Black professionals are turning bias into breakthrough. When I first met Erica Harry, I was struck not just by her brilliance, but by her audacity. Here was a woman who looked at a 10% increase in racial discrimination charges and saw not just injustice, but opportunity. While most of us were wringing our hands, she was building a movement that's transforming how Black professionals navigate hostile workplaces. Erica isn't just documenting discrimination, she's weaponizing it to create systemic change that no diversity training has ever achieved. Let me be clear: discrimination is ugly, painful, and unjust. But today, I want to share something revolutionary that Erica taught me, something that challenges everything we've been told about how to respond to workplace racism. The headlines shocked us all: a 10% increase in racial discrimination charges filed with the EEOC in 2024. 30,270 charges filed between October 2023 and September 2024. When most people see these numbers, they see defeat, they see regression, they see proof that nothing has changed. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if this 10% increase represents not failure, but the first real opportunity for transformation we've had in decades? This is the counterintuitive truth that Erica Harry shared with me. The spike in discrimination charges isn't just evidence that racism persists, it's evidence that silence is ending. For generations, Black professionals have swallowed their pain, buried their trauma, and smiled through hostile workplaces just to survive. But something profound is shifting. More Black professionals are refusing to be gaslit. They're documenting every microaggression, every passed over promotion, every double standard. And they're filing formal complaints at unprecedented rates. This isn't just anger, this is strategy. As Erica told me, the spike in formal complaints is accelerating institutional change in ways that voluntary DEI initiatives never could, because it creates financial and reputational consequences for companies that fail to address discrimination. Think about that. For decades, we've relied on the goodwill of corporations to address racism through diversity initiatives. We've sat through countless unconscious bias trainings while watching the same bias decisions happen again and again. We've celebrated symbolic victories while structural racism remained untouched. But documentation creates consequences. It creates patterns of evidence that can't be dismissed as isolated incidents. It creates legal liability. It hits bottom lines. And suddenly, companies that could ignore voluntary diversity initiatives can't ignore 30,000 formal complaints. This shift from quiet endurance to strategic documentation represents a fundamental power shift. And it's happening right as many companies are experiencing what Erica calls diversity fatigue, quietly dismantling their DEI departments and hoping no one will notice. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Just as corporate America thought it could retreat from its racial justice commitments, Black professionals are building a paper trail that makes retreat far more costly than progress. Erica shared three key insights that every one of us should internalize, especially in this climate. First, documentation is power. The increase in racial discrimination charges demonstrates that more Black professionals are documenting their experiences, which is the first step toward systemic change. In an environment where many DEI departments are being scaled back or eliminated entirely, having formal documentation of discrimination is more important than ever for protecting your career and rights. As Maya Angelou once said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Documentation transforms that untold story into evidence that cannot be ignored or dismissed. Second, community resources are expanding rapidly. Despite the challenges, there's been explosive growth in resources specifically designed to support Black professionals and entrepreneurs. These aren't just support groups, they are strategic networks creating alternative pathways to success. Let me tell you about how Donovan Woodbury, frustrated by the networking barriers facing Black professionals, especially as companies scale back their diversity initiatives. Donovan created MelaninCon. What started as a small gathering has evolved into a major event that now includes initiatives like the Scholar Pitch competition, offering $8,000 in financial support to exceptional HBCU scholars, and the HBCU Student Sponsorship Initiative, providing 50 students with free access to the conference. But MelaninCon isn't just another conference. It's creating a sustainable pipeline connecting HBCU students with industry leaders, mentorship opportunities, and career resources that advance their professional journeys. It's addressing the persistent opportunity gaps that formal diversity initiatives have failed to close. This is what happens when we stop waiting for inclusion and start building our own tables. Third, financial barriers remain the biggest obstacle for Black entrepreneurs. But even here, documentation is creating new possibilities. The National Bureau of Economic Research conducted groundbreaking research examining why Black owned startups start smaller and stay smaller over their first 8 years. What they found was illuminating. Black entrepreneurs apply for loans less often than white entrepreneurs, largely because they expect to be denied credit, even when they have good credit histories. The anticipation of rejection becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that keeps Black businesses undercapitalized. But here's where documentation creates opportunity. By tracking patterns of loan denials across institutions, Black entrepreneurs are identifying which financial institutions are genuinely open to Black businesses and which ones maintain structural barriers. This knowledge is power. It allows entrepreneurs to target their applications strategically rather than facing endless rejection. Organizations like BNX have developed sophisticated resources to help Black professionals document discrimination, understand their rights, and take appropriate action when facing workplace bias. The increased reporting has created greater transparency around workplace discrimination and is forcing companies to address systemic issues more directly than voluntary DEI initiatives alone. As Erica notes, the increased willingness to formally document discrimination is creating both individual protection for Black professionals and collective pressure for institutional change across industries. What makes Erica Harry's perspective so valuable is her ability to see beyond the discouraging statistics to the opportunities they represent. As she reminded me, in every challenge lies the seed of opportunity for those willing to see it. The affirmation she shared resonates deeply. I am not just documenting my experiences for protection. I am creating a record that will drive meaningful change for myself and others. For Black professionals navigating corporate America or entrepreneurship in 2025, this perspective offers both practical guidance and renewed hope. The path forward isn't about waiting for institutions to change on their own. It's about strategically using documentation, community resources, and knowledge of systemic barriers to create change from within and without. This isn't just about survival, this is about transformation. I want to challenge you to think differently about discrimination documentation. Stop seeing it as merely defensive, a shield to protect yourself. Start seeing it as offensive, a weapon to create the change you deserve. Documentation isn't just about what happened to you, it's about creating an irrefutable record that forces action. It's about transforming your individual pain into collective power. When you document discrimination, you're not just filing a complaint. you're contributing to a body of evidence that makes patterns of injustice undeniable. You're creating financial consequences for maintaining racist systems. You're making discrimination expensive. And in a capitalist system, making something expensive is often the fastest way to make it unacceptable. So here's my call to action: document everything, every slight, every double standard, every passed over promotion. Be meticulous, be strategic, be relentless. But don't stop there. Share your documentation with community organizations that aggregate these experiences. Connect with others facing similar challenges. Transform your individual documentation into collective action. The 10% increase in discrimination charges filed with the EEOC tells us that more Black professionals are choosing to speak, to document, to advocate. And in that choice lies tremendous power, not just to protect individual careers, but to transform workplaces and entrepreneurial ecosystems for everyone. In the words of Audre Lorde, when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard or welcomed, but when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak. It is better to document. It is better to file the complaint. It is better to create the record that will make discrimination too expensive to maintain. Your documentation isn't just paperwork, it's revolution. And when enough of us transform our pain into strategic documentation, we won't just be protecting ourselves, we'll be creating the workplaces we deserve, not through appeals to goodwill, but through the strategic application of consequences. This is how change happens, not by asking nicely, but by making injustice unsustainable. Document, connect, transform. The future belongs to those who refuse to be silent about the present.